Another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast coming at your dome piece. We've got the Notre Dame preview. Huge game this weekend coming up, and we are going to get you ready to know who's injured, who to look out for, and what do we expect to see. We've also got Matt stats coming up in today's show and a lot more as well. Let's roll that beautiful intro, shall we?
Has it been weird seeing like all these national outlets and publications and whatnot analyze this matchup, and like the near consensus is that not only Louisville covers but has a good chance to outright win?
Hello and welcome to another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast, brought to you by the State of Louisville Podcast Network. With me tonight for our Notre Dame preview episode is our friend Vincent Lococo and Matt McGavic. And gentlemen, how the hell are you?
Tired. It's late, but you know what? We burn the midnight oil because you know what? It's a very important game week. So you know,
don't tell basketball that.
Hey, they got the schedule out, so.
Oh yeah, big schedule. Hopefully, they win more than 4 this year.
Well, fellas, Matt, haven't been able to see you since last week. How's your week been?
It's been good. I mean, it's been hectic just because, you know, you go from playing 2 crap bums, then a bye week, and then, you know, you got a good power opponent in Georgia Tech, and then it's balls to the wall. You're playing Notre Dame. So it's been busy. It's been a good busy, but it's been busy.
So, you know, one of the things that drives me nuts when things are a little bit busy, I could go for something a little bit easier in life, you know? And you know what's really easy in life? Playing with our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. It is football season. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. We are in the thick of it. And if you want to get yourself in on the action and able to play, hop on over to our friends at Underdog Fantasy. They make playing easy. They dial the games down to where you don't have to worry about a lot of different things. You simply have to find your players' favorite stats, like touchdowns, passing yards, and more. And you just simply pick higher or lower. Put together your group and then roll that into the action. And to play is even easier. All you have to do is sign up over at UnderdogFantasy.com or at the Underdog Fantasy app if you're on your phone. And if you are a first-time user, I implore you to use promo code PINKSEATS. If you do that, Underdog will give you a free pick to use on your first cash pick'em, plus up to $1,000 in bonus cash on your initial deposit. One more time for you, that's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Pink Seats to claim your new customer special of a free pick and your initial deposit bonus offer.
And take that bet and bet the Yankees to win the World Series now. I just want everyone else to have their heart broken, like myself, Matt.
Oh, I'm a Reds fan, for God's sake. We just fired our manager.
It's about
time. Since we're blowing it all up, I mean, you can send Ellie over to us while you're at it.
Hey, you wait 3 years until he's almost through arbitration, and then you can have him.
Right.
If we trade Ellie, I might legitimately abandon Reds fandom.
I know this isn't a baseball podcast, but Joey Votto for manager?
It's better than David Bell.
As much as I would love that, and I mean, I would love that, I doubt that will happen. But Matt, it's been a week since we've seen you, and every time you're on the show, you know we gotta have them. We need them. I'm craving them. I'm jonesing for them in my veins. Give me some of those Matt stats.
All right.
Oh wow, that was a solid crack. That could have went like.
That was a good one.
Did you break your fingers?
I mean, my hands are a little bit sore now. That was a little bit too good. But anyways, all right. I mean, it's Louisville versus Notre Dame. It's a matchup where you don't really need anything else to hype it up. I mean, it's Notre Dame. I mean, like you said, Vince, appease Notre Dame, get in heaven. It's
right.
It's my matchup. So you know, I had to really break out some.
Hold on, so big time that it's on Peacock.
Hey, we're the game they're using to try and up their subscriber count.
I know.
They
Before I get into the stats, let me just rant for a second.
got
I'm
me.
already
Yes.
dreading the amount of people I'm going to see on Saturday on Twitter, and they go to try and look for the game, and they're like, "Why? Where's the game on TV? It's not on TV. Like, where
Shouldn't
is
it be on local TV?"
And we've been preaching this since like the preseason that yes, the Notre Dame game will be on Peacock. It will not be on TV at all. Again, for the listening audience, the game is not on television. It is on Peacock, the streaming app courtesy of NBC. Sorry, I had to get that out because I've already seen plenty of it on social media, and I know it's going to be bad.
Yarg, me mateys, I may implore ye to explore the high seas rather than paying for Peacock.
He's terrible.
I do not.
Hey, Peacock's got some good. Peacock has some good, like Criminal Mind type documentaries. They got some good.
Ahoy!
Yeah, they got good stuff. yeah. That's what I do for UFC too, Keith. So I'm very familiar with that. Matt, let stats roll, buddy.
What I do every NFL Sunday because I'm cheap like that. But anyways, I mean, one of the big storylines with Notre Dame as a whole is that they've got a good team. There's no doubt about that. But with their big portal acquisition in old familiar foe quarterback Riley Leonard, I mean, we kind of knew based on because we've seen him play against Louisville before. We've seen him play at Duke, Vince's favorite team, and he's not really been the most super proficient thrower. And I'd be lying if I knew 100% like what Riley Leonard's like injury status is for the. I mean, he's going to play. There's no doubt about that. But I'd be lying if I knew like if he was like 100% healthy. But I mean, based on the way that he's played, I would not be shocked if he's banged up in some capacity because I mean, been great running the football. There's no doubt about that. But he's been terrible throwing. He's been terrible throwing it, and he's seemingly displayed an unwillingness to throw it deep. I mean, he's done it a few times, but it's like he's got Jack Plummer disease. He doesn't want to.
Seems like this offseason where he didn't get the chance to throw the ball to his receivers and stuff is starting to bleed into the season. It's almost like having chemistry is a real thing.
Yeah, no kidding. So I say all that to say, of the 45 power conference plus Notre Dame quarterbacks that have 100 plus dropbacks, according to Pro Football Focus, Riley Leonard has the 6th worst NFL QBR at 72.9. He has the 5th lowest average depth of target at 7.0 yards per target. So he's not slinging the ball downfield hardly at all. And according to PFF's big time throws metric, he's tied for the fewest of this bunch with just 2 of them. And let me just pull up while I'm thinking about it. Let me pull up like the actual definition of big time throws because it's kind of arbitrary. Like it's a pass with excellent ball location and timing, generally thrown further down the field and or into a tighter window.
My football brain can't wrap that. I mentally cannot compute. That doesn't make any sense. This is why I love PFF.
Listen,
PFF
I love PFF, but I read this stat and I'm like, this makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, I mean, right. It's like it kind of reminds me of whenever it makes sense. I get what you're saying, but it reminds me of how we're like Ledford all the time used to laugh at like the PFF grades because he would obviously Mekhi Becton or somebody would grade out super high on a Louisville grade, and then they're like in the 70s or 60s with PFF, and it's like you all don't even know the damn offense.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of this with PFF that is very subjective. I will say that, and this is definitely one that barks up that tree. And so instead of getting for the other mad stats, instead of getting like super duper into the weeds with some really obscure stats, honestly, there were enough like, face value stats that kind of bear bringing up and kind of like using that as a springboard for the rest of the discussion. And there's going to be some strength versus strength in this game. There's going to be some weakness on weakness. And there's also going to be one matchup that Louisville can exploit very well. And I'll start with what I call unstoppable force meets immovable object. according to PFF, Notre Dame's ability to run the ball, whether that's with Riley Leonard, their running backs, and Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Prince, their rushing grade is 88.5, which is 11th in the FBS. Louisville's run defense is 93.1, which is 3rd in the FBS. So strength on strength right there. Now I come to what I call stoppable force meets movable object. In Notre Dame's passing grade is 60.4, which is 105th, and Louisville's coverage grade is 66.1. So Notre Dame has a very clear weakness when it comes to throwing the ball. I've already kind of explained that with some of the deeper stats with Riley Leonard, but they can't really take. I mean, even if they did throw the ball well, Louisville would be like in a bad spot. But since it's a weakness for Notre Dame, Louisville doesn't really have to worry too much at the fact that they don't defend the pass really well, because Notre Dame can't pass it very well to begin with. So it seems there it's just a matter of who has the more egregious screw up in that regard if they do kind of throw the ball down the field. And okay, there's the good on good matchup, there's the bad on bad matchup, and then there's the matchup. There's a lot of matchups like between position groups in this game that on paper appear to be relatively even, whether that's for good or for bad. But there is one matchup that works out very favorably for Louisville, and that's when it comes to Louisville's pass rush. They have the 4th highest graded pass rush in the nation, according to PFF, with an 84.4 grade, whereas Notre Dame's pass blocking grade on offense is 105th. So basically, if it's a clear passing situation, they should be able to get in the backfield relatively easily on a 4-man rush. Now, that's probably because a lot of the fact that Notre Dame's been banged up to hell, which we will get into in here in a little bit. But this is a game where Louisville probably will not have to blitz a ton. And even if they do, it's just going to be a luxury. And it's going to be make it easier on them to get home. And one more point wrapping up my segment. We've kind of talked already how Quincy Riley has not exactly had the greatest start to the year, with it just dropping back in coverage. I mean, he's got a 55.9 grade according to PFF. But Louisville is not the only team where one of their top defensive stars has had a slow start. In fact, defensive tackle Howard Cross III, I mean, he got multiple All-American honors last season. I'm almost certain he was a consensus All-American. I'm not 100% sure, but I do know he was an All-American by multiple publications. He's at a 57.7 grade. Like, he's been almost a non-factor. And that probably plays into the fact that Notre Dame's, like, pass rush has been, like, kind of eh. I mean, it's been good, but, I mean, like, there are guys on that defensive line in that front seven who, again, because partially due to injuries, it's been kind of not nearly what we would expect out of this Notre Dame defense. And this is a good Notre Dame defense, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, so one of those things, and I didn't want to cut you off while you were going through the stats, Matt, but let's take the chance here. Did you have any other stats, or was that it? I don't want to cut you off if there's anything left in the chamber.
That's it. I mean, I could have gone super like deep into the list of these individual guys, but I mean, like the face value stats tell a lot. Like, there's going to be some really highbrow matchups, whether that means like 2 really good units going up against each other or 2 kind of units going up against each other. And there's not a ton of areas on this field where there's going to be a clear like advantage over like the other, except for like really the one that I pointed out.
So let's take this chance then to sort of roll into the actual preview segment of the Notre Dame game. And this is especially with the amount of injuries we all have, I was trying to think of how to summarize this game, and I think the best way I could think of is that it's just 2 good football teams running into each other. Now, one of the things that did have me curious when you were talking about the Matt stats was the matchup of the Notre Dame pass protection and their struggles versus Louisville, which I'm kind of surprised to see as high of a pass rush grade as they have, because just personal observation, I thought they had struggled with just rushing 4, but I'm guessing there's more that goes into the PFF eval onto that. So Vince, I want to slide it over to you. If you're getting ready to, if you know your coaches are prepping to do game prep against a team whose pass protection is their weakness, but they do have a strong run game, do you feel like that puts more pressure on the offensive side of the ball to hey, we got to get a lead so that our defense can play with this huge advantage? Or do you think it's more on D, hey, let's leverage, exploit this, and
I think a little bit of both, obviously. I mean, you want to exploit it, but the way that they would exploit it would be, I mean, in my opinion, if they struggle with pass rush and they're running the ball, I would just run not your base defense, but I likely wouldn't blitz my linebackers a whole lot like Matt was talking about. I would just run a lot of stunts, loops, picks, and things like that to maybe confuse the offensive line. And that would kind of take care of your pass rush there. And everybody plays sound, fundamental gaps. I mean, that's what we've been struggling with the most is bad eyes and things like that. That's what we got busted on last week. But offensively, with Notre Dame in general, I've felt like the past however many years we played them that you want to get a lead and you want to, because at least a 2-touchdown lead, because I feel like this isn't a team that's built to fight from behind like that. I mean, if you're forcing Riley, a lot like last weekend with King, if we're forcing them to throw the ball deep like that, we all feel pretty good about that situation, even with how average our DBs have been this year. I feel good about it, at least.
If Riley Leonard's throwing like Haynes King, we might be in trouble.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
actually,
every body I listen to, all the PFF podcasts I listen to, and then I listened to that Locked On Notre Dame podcast or whatever, and then somebody else. But obviously the Locked On Notre Dame one was favoring Notre Dame more, but the PFF guys were like, I mean, wouldn't you take Haynes King at this point over Riley Leonard? And it's like, yeah, well, why would you not? So it's like, that's kind of how I look at that. So yeah.
Has it been weird seeing all these national outlets and publications and whatnot analyze this matchup, and the near consensus is that not only Louisville covers, but has a good chance to outright win?
The vibes are off, kind of, because I'm not used to Louisville heading into one of these national games, and everyone's like, yeah, no, I think
finally everybody agrees with me. That's where I'm at. I'm like, finally, I'm not the crazy one out here. Y'all understand what I've been seeing. But I mean, for me, Matt, no, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that weird. I told you at the beginning of the year Notre Dame was fraudulent. That's basically just based off of gut feeling and everything. But this, I mean, it seems to be that. Is this a Marcus Freeman style coach football team? An average football team with a good defense? An average offense with a good defense.
See,
that's the weird thing, though, because you go through and you look at the players who are making plays for Notre Dame this season, and it's like, dang, they got some studs on the offensive side of the ball. Whereas
even the quarterback the past 2 years, I can ask both of you all this. Take you back to last year. I give you Jack Plummer and Sam Hartman. Which quarterback are you taking out of the transfer portal before the season?
Hartman
okay,
in a landslide.
I go this year. Are we taking Tyler Shuck or are we taking Riley Leonard going into the season not knowing anything? You can't make that face. We've all sat here and said, well, Tyler can be okay or he can be good. He just has to stay healthy. Everything about that has to stay healthy.
Closer to a wash.
No way. You think that's more of a wash?
I will say, especially with how Leonard finished the year last year, plus I was banging the drum on Tyler Shuck early. Now, he wasn't the guy go out and get him. I had high hopes of going and getting a Dante Moore or a Julian Sayin.
That's probably what I'm saying. So, to your point, you would have been hammering for this guy over Tyler. And we all would have. If we would have seen the board and seen the top 3 guys, and it was Riley Leonard, Tyler Shuck, and whoever Keith just said, Riley Leonard would have been your best option at the time. Before we've seen everyone play. I didn't even know who Tyler was before the season.
I can't say anything because I was caping for DJU.
Exactly. Yeah. Shut up. You would have loved Riley Leonard. Yeah.
So my approach wasn't to go get a 1-year rental. The kid I mentioned is currently the
I know
backup
what
for
you
Will
want.
Howard at Ohio State.
You want like 14-year-olds to commit to Louisville like now, so we can lock them in for a long time.
I'm really glad you finished that sentence, Vince.
Yeah,
I was
right.
real
Seriously.
concerned.
Big seeds out of
If
context.
we don't get Dylan Raiola to commit, everything is a failure.
Dude, how about him looking like Jackson Mahomes, the brother of Raiola? That's hilarious. That whole
The
thing is so
cosplay has
funny.
to stop.
Yeah, it's weird.
We've reached enough here.
Yeah, the whole jumping and pumping the fans up got me. That's what I was like.
So to steer this boat back on track, you talked about Riley Leonard a little bit, and the strength of his game is he's a good power runner. Now that said, Louisville just went up against a great running quarterback last week, and other than one play where we had bad eyes and gave up a 20-yard touchdown run, shut him down pretty well. Now, Haynes King, pretty good passer, and he was able to burn us on that side. So, two-part question. Do you think this defense is going to be able to shut down Riley Leonard to a similar capacity in the running side like we did Haynes King? And if we do and force them to be more aerial-oriented, are you worried seeing some of the warts that we saw in our defense last week?
So I think when it comes to defending Riley Leonard when his ability as a runner, I think it's going to be a little bit harder because he does play a lot more physical. He does grit and grind for some of those yards, whereas Haynes King, I mean, he's a great runner, but he's more of like a speed runner and elusive type of runner where like he'll take one cut, make a man miss, whatnot. But I think we all three can. Oh my God, I can't speak. I think all three of us here can agree that Haynes King is a much better passer than Riley Leonard.
Yes,
so if you're the Louisville defense, you don't have to play back like you had against Georgia Tech. You can creep up on the box against Riley Leonard because with the exception of a handful of throws, he hasn't shown this year the capability or even the willingness to throw it down the field, except for like maybe a couple times against the MAC schools. And Northern Illinois learned very early in that game that they could sell out on the run and dare Notre Dame to try and pass it. And Notre Dame didn't take the bait.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I think this is all dependent on, for us defensively, it's dependent on, obviously everybody's going to have to do their job, but these three guys specifically being TJ Quinn and the two safeties. I mean, the two safeties are going to have to come in the box to our point that what we've been talking about, but TJ as well, somebody who's, I'll say it. I mean, he struggled the first couple games this year. I mean, somebody we expect to bounce back, but this could be a huge game for him where he could change that narrative for, myself and everybody else who's thinking, is he the guy this year? Is our leading tackler from last year the guy this year? So I think those three guys right there, like it's got to be huge for them.
Vince, I'm really glad you mentioned TJ because that was one of the questions I had queued up was, does Riley Leonard's strengths in his run game being more of a power runner, do we think that plays more into what TJ does well to where he can have a better game?
Yeah, he can fit yes. I mean, he's definitely a hat-to-hat type of guy where, I mean, he'd much rather meet you in a B-gap straight up than and to go have to tackle you on an angle, So I think he can play. And then again, I thought King was going to play into his favor at the same time. It's just that long touchdown run. I mean, he just got pinned down and took the bait going down inside. And same with Jackson State, where he just kept going to the wrong side. It's like his triangle that he was reading. It's what they teach a lot, Keith. Offensive line, that triangle, they might be sending guys that way, but the ball's really going to end up coming out this way, coming out the back end of that. And, he just got bad reads on his triangle, and he needs to lock in a little bit more. And, I mean, same was going for Quincy from what I said last week. He just needs to lock in on that touchdown pass. That was all bad leverage. So
and honestly, if you're someone either in the secondary or like in those middle linebackers playing in pass coverage, you've got to think at least in terms of with your confidence as it pertains to playing in coverage. This game potentially could mean a lot because Yeah, because Notre Dame doesn't throw the ball exceptionally well at all. That's well established. But if you can make plays, or at least like in your mind think you're making plays that prevent them from stopping them from throwing it, like in terms of your mentals, your confidence, like that can be a huge boost to the guys. I mean, we've seen how guys like TJ Quinn and Stanklon Clark, they're great against the run, but they're not great against the pass. And then we've seen some guys in the secondary outright struggle with pass coverage, aka Quincy and Devin Neal. But if you can have a game where, if you watch the game and while you don't come away with like these guys were made plays defending the pass, if you can come out of that game thinking that you at least made plays against the pass and get the vibe that like your efforts helped stop them and prevent them from throwing the ball, that can do wonders for your confidence.
Now, this might sound very, dumb and trivial to some people, but you have to know where the first down marker is. This is going to be a big one of those games because Riley Leonard isn't going to be taking those shots, right? I mean, like we've been saying, he's not going to be taking those shots downfield. So if it's 3rd and 6, guess where he's probably likely going to be throwing the ball? About 7 yards. It's going to be about that every single time. So guys like TJ, guys like Stan Kwan, they have got to take their drops in coverage and know where their guy is. If 2 goes out, 1's coming in. If 3 goes out, 2's coming in type deal. I mean, they just have to have their head on a swivel and know where they're at on the football field at all times. It sounds very dumb, but a lot of times guys are not even paying attention to stuff like that in the middle of the game, where the first down marker is. Like Matt said, Quick's the easy prime example for everyone to think about that. You just don't really know where you're at on the – I'm sure he did, but we're not going down that rabbit hole. God damn it, man. We're not going down that rabbit hole.
It's a classic example that a lot of people can automatically tie to. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and you just like flashbacks and it's like, pain and suffering. And
see – pain and suffering. I thought you were going to go with Tua as the example there, not knowing where the first down marker was before dropping his head. But
I was at jiu-jitsu the other day and somebody did a forward roll. And I sat back for a second as a Dolphins fan, Keith, and I'm like, Tua was just trying to forward roll in jiu-jitsu. That's all he was trying to do. What a fucking idiot. I'm like I mean, that's what I was thinking. I seriously said that out loud. I was like, he was doing a forward roll.
Didn't Tua actually do like martial arts training?
That's what I'm saying. He did jujitsu to teach him how to fall, because that's one of the things they teach him to do.
You say that might not be a joke. He might have actually been.
That's what I'm not joking. I'm smiling and laughing because it's so freaking stupid.
Captain Arutoff here, grabbing the wheel again, steer the boat back on track while we sail these high seas, like I'm sure many of you will this Saturday. So we've talked a lot about like what can go right for Louisville. What are some of the things that could go wrong? Like, who are some of the guys on Notre Dame that scare you the most with what they can do and the problems they can cause?
Oh, Xavier Watts, easy. Well, they're running backs too, but I think to their defense, and like Notre Dame's defense is light years ahead of their offense. Notre Dame's defense has All-American caliber guys littered all over the place, and you can make the case that Xavier Watts is probably their best player right now. I mean, he's already an All-American safety, and through 4 games into the season, he's already playing like one. I mean, 15 tackles, 3 pass breakups, an interception, a forced fumble. I mean, it's a good start right there if you're on the back end.
Can't complain about that one.
Nope.
How about you, Vince? Anyone?
For me, it's the running backs. Just hearing how much they're likely going to have to rely on this run game and stuff. And I don't want us to get too concerned with Riley Leonard running the ball to where we just are absent-minded towards the running backs. Both the running backs are stud running backs. Can't remember their names at the top of my head. It's
Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. And Love, that kid can scoot, man. He's good.
Yeah, so That's the big thing for me. I mean, those are guys, Love, like you all said, and Price. I mean, both of the guys I could definitely be seeing like as a one hit type of guy at any point for us. Like we miss a gap, and it just seems like that's how these like big runs happen for us. Is one guy's out of place, and it ends up going for 40. Like if it's either going to be a short gain or it's going for 40. There's no in between.
I feel like this is going to be a big game for our edge and our Leo players, just making sure they set edges because I have a lot of confidence on our interior defensive line, especially with the injuries Notre Dame has, and we're going to go over some of those here in a little bit. But our interior defensive line, I think, can clog up a lot of holes in the middle of the field. Can we set the edge on the outside, force players to have to cut back into just a heaping pile of bodies and not give them open space to make plays?
It's not just setting an edge. Like, I mean, you can set an edge all you want, Keith, and just keep going wide, but all of a sudden you created a C gap that you could drive a fucking school bus through. You know, it's about setting the edge and making sure that safety. And that, I mean, and even the linebacker in a lot of those instances, like there's a small gap to go through, and those guys are, you know, within like 3 to 4 yards of the ball carrier, because anything 5 to 10 yards of space, I mean, that's open field. You never know. That's 50-50 shot at that point. We always said we loved our odds of a quarterback against a safety. I mean, at the time we had Malik Cunningham, whenever I was there, we were like, oh, yeah, we'll take that all day. So.
Yeah. And one player who I don't think a lot of national outlets who have talked about, but given some of the struggles we've shown on defense, Mitchell Evans, he's a stud tight end, man. And with some of the fits that our linebacking core has had in coverage, I assume that they will be looking towards him quite a bit because Riley Leonard likes the short passes. Baby needs his bottle. Yeah. Mitchell is going to be one of the guys.
TJ and Stanquan scares me. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
If they end up in the situation where they have to go against him, or even, you know, Devin Neal matched up against him at some point, like that works.
The only thing that makes me feel like that matchup might not be as exploited as badly as we think it could is that Mitchell Evans has had kind of a slow start to the year. I mean, 7 catches for 68 yards. I mean, 3 games in, and 2 of the schools you play are against Max, and one of the FBS schools you played might be one of the worst in the Power Conference. Yeah. So seeing him not really have a super productive stat lineup this year is, well, maybe. I mean, Mitchell Evans is good. I'm not trying to disparage him.
Sounds like saying he's not good. I'm joking.
If you want to interpret that,
I'm joking.
But no, I certainly expected, because I know over the offseason I expected him to have a massive year because he's an all-American caliber talent at tight end. But I mean, he's kind of had a slow start to start the year.
I would assume a lot of coaching staffs are having the same thought I did. Like, hey, quarterback likes to check down. This dude's really freaking good. Don't let him make a play. Which is why, like, Bo Flanagan, I know he's injured now, but he's Notre Dame's number 2 tight end. He had a huge game against Texas A&M, if I remember correctly.
I guess you could always vice them if you wanted to with the outside and inside linebacker, and then play some form of a man coverage on the outside if you wanted to. Like, kind of not double team him, but kind of double team him. You know what I mean, Keith? That's...
Yeah, like a Gronkowski sort of defense almost.
Yeah, like you're going to have a guy in hook curl anyways. So why not just, you know, have him shade a little bit more in towards that tight end because, you know, somebody on the outside can cover. So I don't know. And then, that's an interesting matchup. Definitely one I'm excited to watch because Notre Dame's known for those tight ends.
And then the one last player I wanted to highlight on Notre Dame, Bo Collins, their number 1 wide receiver. That kid can play, man. He's a graduate transfer, I believe, from Clemson.
Yeah.
And it's almost criminal that they have the quarterback they do, because if they had someone who could get him the ball more regularly, this kid would be a rock star.
Well, for our sake, I'm glad he's not.
And plus, they lost out on Chris Tyree, too. He's at Virginia now, isn't he?
I don't know off the top of my head, but...
Because he was someone who I thought was kind of an underrated weapon.
You're the one that watches student directories. You let me know.
True. He's at Virginia now. I mean, he was a converted running back. They turned him into a wide receiver. But like, he's always been someone who like makes plays in space, and now he's not even playing for Notre Dame anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So now, speaking of players who aren't playing That's sort of the perfect springboard. Let's dive.
How much time you got, listener?
Yeah, right.
Let's dive into this injury report because
this is taking me back
smokes.
to 2016 LSU bowl game where it was people out left and right. I mean,
like this. For as high profile of a match this is, you would think looking at the injury report that this is like week 11 or 12, not week 4. So on the Louisville side, you have Colin Lacey and Quincy Riley, both currently as game time decision. Mo Turner, who was out last week and his injury stint was previously announced is 4 to 6 weeks. And then a couple of other names on the Louisville side. Jaden Thompson obviously had that unfortunate injury last week, out for the season. One that surprised me, Jordan Girard, who's out, and it's not really like we haven't gotten a date on when he's coming back. He's just sort of like one of those mystery injury individuals. And then a couple of other players who deeper on the depth chart that aren't out for the season, but realistically, we wouldn't expect them to play. On the Notre Dame side, they, for as much as they demolished Purdue, that field took its pound of flesh from the Notre Dame roster. So injuries, I mentioned him earlier, Cooper Flanagan, one of their top 2 tight ends who had a really good start to the season. He's out. A couple of their starting offensive linemen, they lost top edge, or one of their top 2 edge rushers in Jordan Botello. Like, this is a Notre Dame team that's also really, really beat up. So
take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, I was going through it myself earlier. I mean, they're down 3 starting offensive linemen.
Yeah,
for this game. I mean,
and it was already a very young unit of sophomores and freshmen. I believe they have a senior who was a depth piece who's playing on the O-line now because he was a backup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
and plus one of their go-to cornerbacks off the bench, he pulled a Matt Saluka and decided, you know what? I'm going to redshirt the rest of the year and enter the portal at the end of the year.
I'm sure he's going to have a lot of fun this semester in South Bend, Indiana.
Hey man, it's an hour and a half drive to downtown Chicago. So
that is true. That is true.
And plus, there's been some scuttlebutt that like that Christian Gray, one of their starting corners, is questionable. I couldn't really get confirmation about it, but like I kind of heard some scuttlebutt that he is not operating at full health.
Let me ask you guys this: outside looking in. Louisville wins this game. How hot do you think that seat is for Marcus Freeman?
It's up there.
I mean, it was already hot after the NIU game.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
if Notre Dame loses 3-4 games this year, and I've had this conversation with you all like via the group text, but I'll put it out on the podcast as well. Hop into the comments if you think I'm crazy. I'm terrified that if they do fire Marcus Freeman, their first call might be Jeff Brom.
No, like their first call is going to be to Urban Meyer.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
First call is going to be Urban Meyer. Every coaching carousel cycle, there is one guy who is like viewed as the consensus as like the guy that like if a blue blood fires their coach, like that's the guy they're going to go after. And I think this year that guy is Eli Drinkwitz.
Maybe
I'm just saying I've already heard his name come up with the Florida job.
So, and now let me at least put a little bit more of an explanation.
I know. I'm ingrained because of who I was around to think of him as like great value, Scott Satterfield. So every time I see him, I just look at him as like, hi, I'm Scott Satterfield, and this is Cable Scott Satterfield. Like, that's what I look at him for every time.
So to put a little bit of condition and a little bit of explanation behind my worry, if Louisville beats Notre Dame, then this is very likely going to be a Louisville team that's another 9, potentially 10 win season on their hands. Louisville has had many coaches in the past, including some that we didn't think would leave for enough commas and zeros. And a lot of people, oh, well, it's the Brahms. He would never leave Louisville. I'm like,
Who do you think left for more commas and zeros?
a lot of people didn't think Charlie Strong was going to leave.
He left to become the first African American coach at Texas.
A lot of people didn't think Bobby Petrino was going to leave.
NFL.
Yeah,
and to be fair, with the Charlie Strong thing, there was probably a good chance he was going to get fired anyways because of what was going on behind the scenes.
If you keep winning, I think the seat would have gotten hotter quicker, but it's hard to argue with Dubs. And
my
also,
thing is I don't think Miss Braun would go for that. I text you that in the group message. I know for a fact that the parents were not happy. The first Oscar probably didn't care as much, but I know Miss Braun was not happy that first go around when he did not take that job.
And don't discount the power of potentially upsetting your wife, because which upset wife raised a stunk earlier this year. Dan Hurley's.
Well, I mean, I would counter that with who's the Braum family's second favorite college football team, probably.
But who's their first? And we're not going anywhere. What are you talking about, Keith? Just get this. I was hoping you weren't going to bring this up, man. But
it's a legitimate worry,
I guess we're
man.
here. What else do you worry about? Are you one of those guys that worries about getting nuked 24/7 too? Do you have a bunker?
Now, if I get to be released from my mortal coil, I welcome that. But I'm terrified of Louisville football going 7-5.
I mean, they're already 3-0. So
I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to think about, Keith, and it is nowhere in my brain that I get you have worries, but I don't think it's anywhere near what you think.
This is what happens when you have 2 bye weeks and 2 bye games for the first 4 weeks of the season. Your mind wanders.
When you have time on your hands.
Here's I won't eat dog shit if he goes to Notre Dame. I won't do it. Which seems like the Taco Bell guy's actually going to go through with it. So props to him.
Is he?
If you guys been keeping up with that, he set a date and a time and everything. Last I saw. And it was a hilarious video, too. He had a brown bag on under a table. So just imagine it's a table with a beefy 5-layer burrito on top of it and his head popping up.
Oh, my God. This is like the first episode of Black Mirror in a sports setting. Oh, my God. Kids, if you've never watched Black Mirror, don't. I don't want to have to explain what happens in the very first episode.
Fair. I've never seen it.
It's bad.
Well, now that we've got that sort of out of the way, we've talked about the injury report. It's time for predictions. So, with that being said, to recap, everyone except me, 3-0 on the season. I'm 2-1 because I stuck to my principles.
At least we know we can trust you, Keith.
Yeah,
like that. I mean, stick by your guns.
We reached out to one Jacob Lane earlier this evening, and with the line currently at multiple sports books being set at 6.5, Notre Dame minus 6.5. That is what we are going to pick based off of. So, with that said, Jacob Lane has officially taken Louisville plus 6.5. So, Jacob's going with the Cards. Vince, we're going to go with you next.
The 6.5 means Notre Dame's getting the 6.5, or we're getting the 6.5?
Louisville is getting the 6.5 points.
Yeah, they're the 6.5 point dog.
Oh, Louisville. Yeah. Going with Louisville on this. Yes. Yeah.
I feel like Vince would be hammering Louisville money line if this were an option.
I would. I would. I told you at the beginning of the year, I don't get the hype around Notre Dame, man. I guess it's the Catholic thing. But I don't know.
See, this is one of those games where if Louisville was the favorite by 6.5, I'd probably take Notre Dame to cover but not win, because this has defensive slugfest written all over it, if you ask me. But since Louisville's the dog, I'm going to take Louisville here.
You think it'll be a defensive slugfest?
Oh, yeah.
Depends on what our play calling is.
I know. I'm kind of behind you guys. If we throw it, like y'all were texting the group message, sorry to cut your picks off, but like if
Oh,
we
you're
threw the ball like 40 times, I mean, I do want to see like 10 to 15 carries, right? But like if you threw the
Yeah,
ball
like,
free,
don't throw it out the window. Like obviously, like
right,
diversify the play calling, but like don't do what they did against Notre Dame and against Georgia Tech, excuse me, and continuously run the ball when you
right.
have proof that it is not working.
Like
Like
the
I get,
meshes
like,
and the rub routes and all that stuff was working on Saturday. Those are things
oh
that
yeah,
I mean can
yeah,
get you to an easy 40 attempts and a
they
high
had no
completion
answer
percentage. Yeah,
they
right.
had no answer for simple shallow crossers and whatnot.
Yeah,
And if they like get the 10 to 15 carries, yes. But if you do have some success, like yeah, if the game plan calls for it in that situation, like start to incorporate it more. But I mean, this is a solid Notre Dame front seven. If you start having struggles running the ball, whenever the run blocking for Louisville hasn't been that good, the running back
right.
room is kind of banged up right now. So if you start encountering some pushback in the run, like don't. I mean, what's the definition of insanity again?
Running your head into doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome. Boom, got it.
Yeah.
That's that private school education right there.
Yes. Keith, you're up. Picks.
So, we talked a lot about this game, and the vibes are bad in South Bend right now. Their starting quarterback, Riley Leonard, got booed in the first quarter at home last week playing against Miami of Ohio.
He's used to that. His mom texts him and tells him he sucks every single
I
week.
forgot about that.
He's used to that.
They announced this game was going to be a green out in the preseason, only for Marcus Freeman now to be having a meeting with the captains on if they want to break out them green britches. It's going to be their Super Bowl game because before the season, they assumed their marquee matchup was going to be Florida State, and we know how they're doing. We very likely are going to be the only ranked team Notre Dame plays at home this year.
Did they not play USC at home this year? Or is
I
that
believe
or is that Coliseum?
I believe that's on the road.
Yeah, it's on the road. Yep,
Yeah.
you're right.
I had this monologue a little bit prepped, but not prepped enough, obviously.
Well, they play Stanford after a bye. You can break
They
up.
are incredibly banged up on the offensive line. And yet, I am still worried about this game. If y'all remember me talking about the preseason, this is one of the games that I had highlighted that I'm very worried about. But 6.5 is far too many points for me to be willing to spot. And frankly, because everyone else is picking Louisville, I can't afford to go behind 2 games. I'm riding with the Cards.
This is an educated pick at this point.
So another boring prediction segment where all of us are taking the Cards, and it's very nice. We get some points this year. We don't have to lay them down finally.
I know
It's weird. I'm shocked like Marcus Freeman didn't say something like real witty, like I'm gonna take all the captains and pray at the grotto, and we're all going to see if we can wear the green uniforms after that. And we all emerged from prayer, and we're wearing the green uniforms.
We took our pilgrimage to Gary, Indiana.
You think he's playing NCAA football to get ready for this football game, scouting wise? Since like that's his big game prep.
Oh my God.
No, he's having NIU's coach do the game planning for him.
Ah, there it is. Got to have other coaches do the work for you.
Yeah. All the TAs do it for you.
Hey, at least he looks good.
So, that being said, any last things you want to fire off before we wrap things up and get out of here for the evening?
Are either of you guys going to South Bend?
No.
I will be there.
No.
Yeah. So Vince, peer pressure.
No, I will be rolling out very early in the morning, posting up at the linebacker as soon as they open, enjoying my fair share of spirits there before I walk my happy tail right over to the stadium, which I've learned is a little bit of a hike, so getting my cardio in as well.
What I will say is I'm very disappointed we don't have a bar called Walk-Ons or Linebacker anywhere in the vicinity of Louisville. I feel very offended. Maybe we should do a fullback one.
Oh,
yeah, here we go, guys.
The fullback lounge.
Fullback, yeah.
Well, in fairness, the stadium is also across the street from a steel mill, so it's not exactly like in a commercial area.
Hey, steel workers need to drink anywhere. Too.
Yeah, we can open that thing up at like 3 a.m.
Everyone's depressed, baby. Come on into the bar. We'll take you.
I need like a Stooges or a Joe's older than dirt.
Right. That's what I was thinking. Stooges.
All right. So to recap this episode, Matt made the 5-layer beefy burrito guarantee.
Whoa! No.
I thought you said 2. I thought you said 2.
Duct taped together sideways.
Yeah, right. Long ways.
Yeah, I'm up in the game. I'm not taking the beefy burrito. I'm doing it with a crunch wrap.
Oh, God.
There's freaking tortilla in there, man. Oh!
But does it have a flared base? Okay, it's late. We're getting a little bit unhinged over here. So as a reminder, if you haven't already, go down there and wallop that subscribe button with a shillelagh that you have taken from the nearest Notre Dame fan.
Speaking of shillelaghs, St. X Trinity Friday. If it doesn't pour a hurricane, pour a shillelagh. So that kind of throwing that in there. Everybody make sure you get out.
And if you are a member of either the St. X or Trinity team and your team wins, take that shillelagh and wallop that subscribe button as well. Make sure to swing by our friends over at Kern's Corner, Frankfort Avenue Liquors and Wine. And again, promo code Pink Seats. Sign up at Underdog Fantasy. If we get 10,000 people to sign up on Underdog Fantasy, I'm pretty sure they give me and only me $1 billion. So do it for me. Do it for producer Keith. And with that, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of From the Pig Seats podcast. That's Matt McGavic. That's Vince Lococo. I'm producer Keith. And as always, go Cards.